I need to tell someone what I did, and you're going to think I'm terrible. But there's something about calling someone your rock that nobody understands until they've watched that same person pack a suitcase and walk out with half your life. Everyone keeps telling me he was a coward for moving out while I was at work, but the truth is, I'm the one who ruined everything, and here's what really happened. If I don't tell this story, you'll never understand why I let the man who swore he'd never leave me walk away with our dog, our coffee maker, and the blanket my grandmother knitted. But once you know what I know about the kind of person I'd become, you'll see why he had no choice but to save himself from me. I'm going to tell you everything, including why I started hiding my phone like a teenager and the real reason I laughed when he called himself my rock that night. And the part that makes me look worse? I'm saving that for the end because you need to understand how someone can love you so much they actually leave you to keep from destroying you completely. We'd been fighting about the dishes for 3 days straight when he said it. The rock thing. He was standing at the sink, sleeves rolled up, scrubbing a pan I'd left soaking since Tuesday. "I'm your rock," he said, like he was declaring something beautiful instead of stating a fact I should have already known. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because the statement felt so heavy I had to make it lighter or it would crush me right there in our kitchen. You need to understand something about us. About me, really. I'd spent the last 18 months becoming the kind of person who kept score of everything, not just the dishes, though I definitely counted those. I counted who paid for groceries last, who initiated sex more, who said I love you first in conversations. I had this mental spreadsheet, and Mark was always in the red. He just didn't know we were playing a game he could never win. But that's not even the worst part. The worst part is why I started keeping score in the first place. There's something about Mark that I haven't told anyone yet, something that started this whole mess, and I'm terrified to say it out loud, because once you know, you might decide I deserved exactly what happened to me. He traveled for work. Not a lot, maybe twice a month, but each trip felt like a little death. The first time he left for a conference in Denver, I was fine. Better than fine, actually. I ate cereal for dinner, watched 3 episodes of my shows without him making comments about the dialogue, and slept diagonally across our bed. The second time, I organized his closet while he was gone. The third time, I found myself scrolling through his Instagram followers at 2 a.m., clicking on every female name I didn't recognize. By the 5th trip, I had his airline app on my phone. I could tell you his flight number, gate, and whether his plane was running late. I bought a second phone charger and kept it in my car because what if he landed and his phone was dead and he needed me? What if there was an emergency and he couldn't reach me because I was the kind of girlfriend who didn't think ahead? Looking back, the signs were all there, but I was too busy being the perfect partner to see that I was actually becoming a prison warden. My friends all said I was so supportive of his career, but what they didn't know was that while Mark was networking at hotel bars, I was home creating elaborate scenarios where he met someone more interesting than me, someone who didn't text just checking in 17 times a day, someone who trusted him. Everyone was trying to warn me about my behavior, but I couldn't see that they meant I was the one destroying us. My sister asked if I'd thought about therapy. My best friend started responding to my messages with, "Girl, you need to relax," instead of actual advice. Even my mom, who loves Mark like a son, mentioned that maybe I should find a hobby that didn't involve waiting for him to come home. I thought I was being smart, but what I didn't realize was that Mark knew. Of course he knew. He could see my location sharing was turned on. He noticed that I always seemed to call right when his meetings ended. He mentioned once, gently, that it might be nice if I didn't FaceTime him every single night of his trips. And I spent the next day crying in the bathroom because obviously he was getting tired of me. The night he called himself my rock, we'd been fighting because I'd accused him of being secretive. He'd gone to get groceries and taken longer than the 23 minutes Google Maps said it should take. I was so focused on proving he was hiding something that I completely missed that he was probably just driving slowly because it was raining. Or maybe he'd decided to grab me flowers like he did sometimes when he knew we'd been arguing. While I was worried about him taking 27 minutes instead of 23, the real problem was growing in the space between my need to control everything and his need to breathe. Everyone could see what was happening, except me. My need to be needed was suffocating him, and I kept squeezing tighter because I was too afraid to ask what would happen if I let go. That night, when he said he was my rock, I laughed because rocks don't leave. They stay exactly where you put them, solid and dependable and unable to roll away no matter how much pressure you apply. What I didn't understand was that even rocks crack under enough weight, and I'd been stacking my insecurities on his back for months. But here's what I haven't told you, and it changes everything about why he really left. 2 weeks before he moved out, I'd started preparing, not for him to leave, but for me to leave him first. I'd been having these thoughts, terrible thoughts, about how much easier it would be to be the one who walks away instead of the one who gets left. I'd even looked at apartments online, not because I wanted to leave him, but because I was so sure he was going to leave me that I wanted to do it first. I know this makes me sound paranoid and manipulative, but you don't understand what it's like to love someone so much that you start destroying yourself and calling it devotion. I was so convinced Mark was pulling away that I started creating distance myself, testing him to see if he'd fight for me, and then hating him a little more each time he didn't realize he was supposed to be fighting. The morning he left, I was at work because I'd volunteered for an early shift. I need to confess something that makes me look terrible, but you need to understand why I'm the villain in this story, not him. I'd made him sleep on the couch the night before, not because he'd done anything wrong, but because I'd woken up at 3 a.m. convinced he was going to leave me soon, and I figured if I pushed him away first, it would hurt less when he eventually went. When I got home and saw his note, when I realized he'd taken Rocky with him because he knew I'd be too unstable to care for a dog right now, when I saw he'd only taken his clothes and the coffee maker because he knew I never used it anyway, that's when I understood what I'd become. The comments on my posts the next day showed everyone taking my side, calling him a coward for leaving while I was gone. But behind the scenes, in the DMs, people were asking questions I couldn't answer. Questions about whether there was more to the story, whether maybe I'd known this was coming, whether perhaps I wasn't as blindsided as I was pretending to be. Remember when I said the worst part wasn't what you think? Here's the truth. Mark left me a second note, one he tucked into my underwear drawer because he knew I'd find it when I was ready. It said he loved me, that he probably always would, but that loving someone and being able to live with them are different things, and he'd turned into someone he didn't recognize while trying to be my rock. He said he'd keep Rocky until I was steady enough to share custody, and that he'd answer when I was ready to talk, but only if I'd done the work on myself that I needed to do. Now, 3 months later, here's where things stand. I'm in therapy, which everyone thinks is because he broke my heart, but actually, it's because I finally understand I was the one who smashed it into pieces. I haven't posted about the breakup online since that first day because the real story would change how everyone sees their favorite couple. Mark and I text sometimes, mostly about the dog, but last week he asked how I was really doing, and I was honest. I told him I'm learning to be my own rock instead of needing someone else to carry all my weight. You're probably thinking I should be angry that he took the dog, but it gets worse. I signed the paperwork last month making him Rocky's primary owner, because being someone's rock means sometimes you're the one who has to be strong enough to walk away, and I'm trying so hard to learn what that kind of strength looks like. The real reason I'm telling you this is because everyone keeps asking when I'm going to start dating again, and I need someone to understand why I laugh now when people call me brave for surviving heartbreak. Because I'm not brave. I'm just finally learning to carry my own weight instead of crushing the people who love me underneath it.